Welcome back, curious acolytes of the Force, to our archives. To many Sith, immortality is everything. Surviving their imminent punishment of death is something that many of them attempt to escape. While some have tried to dedicate their lives to prolonging their physical stay, others sought to transcend death itself by becoming spirits or ghosts. Many Sith spirits have lived on to cause havoc for future generations to come, perhaps surviving for eons just to make their grand return. Similar things happened when the spirits of both Exar Kun and Marka Ragnos attempted to make a comeback during the era of Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy. However, there exists one Sith spirit who has outlived all others and currently holds the title for the longest living and surviving Sith Lord. This Dark Lord would be named Karness Muur. Interestingly, when we talk about the longest surviving Sith Lord, many would opt to choose a man such as Darth or Valkorion, both of whom discovered the secret of dark transfer and used it to continue living for thousands of years past their natural lives, maintaining an empire under their one rule. While these Sith Lords are notable for having survived in the literal sense, they too gave in to death when their time came. It is only the Sith Lord Karness Muur whose spirit has been able to transcend other in terms of the literal timeline, and surviving in the literal sense. Speaking of eternal life, we would love to keep this channel alive for an eternity, but we haven't yet discovered the secret to essence transfer as of yet. So, if you'd want access to all Star Wars knowledge you could ever want for all of time, be sure to reach out and force crush that subscribe button. Now, come along with us, friends, as we take a look at the ancient being of the dark side, Karness Muur. Karness Muur was actually one of the first Dark Jedi that made the trip over to Korriban and founded the Sith Order as a whole after the Second Great Schism in 100-Year Darkness. Along with the Dark Jedi Zozan, Karness Muur was undoubtedly one of the most evil of the Dark Jedi of his era. He was conceited and all too power-hungry for more. Anytime a new object of power was discovered in the tombs of the ancient Sith kings, it would be Karness Muur who would attempt to lay claim to it first. With the help of his friend and fellow Dark Jedi Sorzis Sin, Muur would craft his ultimate piece of power, and had the ability to turn those around him that were less powerful into Rakghouls, an ancient plague, an ancient monster. But the talisman's power was not perfect, and it could not transform Force sensitives or beings belonging to certain non-human species into Rakghouls. And thus, Karness Muur designed the Rakghoul plague to compensate for this weakness. This virus which he created, carried by every Rakghoul in existence at the time, could be spread to another being by a bite or a scratch. The victim would then suffer through an excruciating transformation before becoming a Rakghoul, one fully capable of spreading the Sith-made disease onto further victims. Into the amulet, Karness Muur poured all of his mind, will, and his magic, and eventually even his very spirit, hoping to escape death and prolonging his life, which of course he ultimately succeeded in. But after this emerged a rival. Remulus Drapa, one of the other Dark Jedi, attempted to destroy Karness Muur as they were rivals, and Drapa wished to climb into the ranks as all Sith ultimately do. Drapa would be successful in capturing Karness Muur and keeping him imprisoned in a stasis pod. However, the one thing that did escape was his talisman, as Karness Muur had designed. Even though his body was in a death-like state, his mind and spirit was presumed to be active within the talisman. The Sith Lord was thus able to continue with his schemes long after his death, with the talisman acting as his gateway into the world of the living, even though his body had passed on. His ultimate plan was to find a strong Force-sensitive individual and trick them into wearing the talisman, which would then allow the spirit of Karness Muur to possess the being and access their own Force abilities and continue his campaign. This plan, though, would take quite a bit of time, and by a bit, I mean just a little over 3,000 years. During the time just before the Mandalorian Wars, several Jedi would begin having terrifying visions of Karness Muur's return, including a young Jedi by the name of Celeste Muur. Around this time, Karness Muur had possessed a Jedi Padawan with his amulet, and Celeste Muur managed to save the Padawan by taking the talisman from his grip. The spirit of Karness Muur then slowly began working on Celeste, bringing her further into the clutches of the dark side, as he plans to push her body to a temporary host while he spread his Rakghoul plague across the galaxy yet again. The Jedi, though, in a desperate effort, then devised a plan daring enough that managed to retrieve the stasis casket that had once held Karness Muur's very body. Celeste then decided to sacrifice herself to forever imprison the spirit of Karness Muur away from the galaxy itself by entering the stasis casket and being buried away with it for all eternity. But this would not be the end, as of course, all eternity would only last about another 4,000 years. 4,000 years later, Celeste would be uncovered by the Empire and Darth Vader personally. Celeste would be quite shaken by her long slumber and attempting to imprison the spirit of Karness, and after questioning Lord Vader, she would find out from an Imperial scientist that the Jedi were no more, and the Empire was now in charge of the galaxy. She quickly deduced that Vader would be a Sith Lord and began to attack him. However, Vader was mystified by the ancient Jedi and desired for her to actually come with him and join him as an apprentice, realizing that she was extremely strong in the Force and possessed a power that had long since been extinct. For most of their duel, Darth Vader was on the defensive and only did enough to keep her off of him while he tried to reason with Celeste, fascinated by the power of Karness Muur that he could sense within her. Celeste, though, was having none of it and only desired to destroy Lord Vader and the Sith. All the while they were fighting, the spirit of Karness Muur was enthralled with Darth Vader and desperately wished to possess his body, sensing his own innate natural power. He kept goading Celeste to just die and give in to Vader, while also whispering to Darth Vader himself to take the amulet for himself and use his power to kill the Emperor, offering him a means to destroy his own master in Darth Sidious. However, Celeste resisted as best as she could, vowing to never allow the Sith to use the amulet as she knew what could happen if a Sith possessed it. Vader also gave the offer some thought, but also realized that if he took the amulet, then he would be trading one Sith master for another. The duel ended when Celeste decided to finally use the power of the amulet and transform the clone troopers nearby into Rakghouls. They promptly killed most of their researchers nearby and chased off Darth Vader, who was now no longer interested in Celeste or the amulet, somewhat fearing the implications of its power. Celeste, having apparently spent enough time with the amulet, more or less had it mastered, and had successfully imprisoned Karness Muur within her very being. 20 years later, Muur would mentally torture Celeste as they remained on the moon together, and he almost drove her to insanity. Though Celeste managed to keep her mortality and actually saved Leia from being possessed by the spirit of Karness Muur whenever Luke, Leia, and their Rebellion Alliance accidentally found the Dark Jedi on the planet sometime later, the Jedi Order continued to keep Karness Muur imprisoned within her for another 100 years following this event, until the two would meet Cade Skywalker, a descendant from Luke several decades later. Cade and Celeste devised a plan, and Muur was completely enamored with Cade Skywalker, being able to sense his immense powers, just as he had sensed the immense power of Darth Vader. When Celeste died during a battle, the talisman crawled its way up to Cade's arm and attempted to overtake him. Cade then revealed his true power and his special ability that he could not be corrupted like others were. Using his incredible power in the Force, Cade then destroyed the talisman of Karness Muur once and for all, and within it, Karness Muur's very spirit. This would be the final end of Karness Muur, and what an end it was. Muur is the longest surviving Sith Lord, clocking in at an estimated 7,200 years of age, surviving far longer than any other Sith. Interestingly, Karness Muur would actually see the birth of the first Sith and the death of the very last Sith, as he did indeed observe Darth Krayt during his final days. That bookended irony is appropriate for the true immortality of the Sith. But my friends, what do you think of Karness Muur? Did you know that it was Karness Muur who was the longest surviving Sith Lord of them all? And if not, who would have been your guess? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, as well as what type of characters you'd like to see us cover in the future. As always, my friends, thank you so much for watching, and may the Force be with you.